I'd like to take the time to thank Acquia for sponsoring today's event. I've done quite a few webinars with Acquia as the supporters of us here at CMS Wire, and it's always a pleasure to work with the team there. A lot of fun to work with them, and they always bring great content. So again, thank you to Acquia for sponsoring, and you can find out more about Acquia at www.acquia.com. All right, so I'm going to disappear here shortly. You won't have to hear me for much longer, but first things first, I'm going to pass things over to Maggie Schroeder, the Director of Product Marketing over at Acquia, to introduce our other guests and kind of get things rolling. So Maggie?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alec. And, it's great to be here. And we're so excited to be highlighting our customer, Liberty Mutual, and the amazing intranet that they've created. And so, of course, Alec gave you a little introduction, but my name is Maggie Schroeder. I'm a director of product marketing at Acquia. I've been here for around 3 years. So if you've seen my face before and you've joined an Acquia webinar, chances are you've maybe encountered myself. And I'll be here throughout the presentation. But again, I mentioned we're really here to highlight our customer, Liberty Mutual, and specifically, what Brian and his team have done to contribute to their intranet. So Brian, with that, I'll pass it over to you for a little introduction to yourself.
Hi, I'm Brian Stannard. I'm a principal software engineer for Liberty Mutual Insurance, and primarily working on our global intranet.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. Cool. And I think that the audience is probably ready to, get on going with the presentation. And I know that intranets and employee experience are really at top of mind for a lot of customers that I talked to today. And Brian, I've had, the pleasure of getting to know what Liberty Mutual has done through your stories and what your team's done. And so with that, let's jump right into it. And can you tell us, a little bit about how the pandemic accelerated your project timelines at Liberty Mutual?
Yes, can't wait to share this presentation with everyone here, and tell you more about how we address the pandemic. So obviously the pandemic and the 2020 was a big shift for every companies. So Liberty Mutual shifted their 45,000 employees across the globe to fully remote, and with that had an increased attention on our intranet because it was the central repository for information about COVID and our response to it, by country and market. With that change and shift, it actually ramped up our timelines for delivering a global intranet by 6 months. So that was definitely a paradigm shift in our timelines of delivery. So one thing that we made sure of is that employees that weren't able to access their company-issued devices, were able to access the content that they needed through their personal devices. So we were able to get over that hurdle and everything. And as well, we targeted our content to our users. Typically in the past, we've only catered to US employees. So this was definitely another shift for us, thinking about more of our outside US employees on here and everything. So we would need to make sure that their experience felt, inclusive and directed towards them on here. So prior to, this shift to the global internet, we were considering, a few things with our solution. That helped us when it came time to implement it, even 6 months sooner than expected. Now we needed a solution that was able to scale from one country, being primarily just the US, to many countries and regions. We needed a solution that was able to be multilingual, because we're not all just English speakers. We have various languages that we support, 13 to be exact. And additionally, we need to, produce regional content based on our available employee data. So these few things, helped us, having those in place, helped us, accelerate it and, drive the global internet a lot sooner than expected, with our shift to the full remote and attention on our intranet. Another thing that we took advantage of was our distributed teams. At Liberty, we have 2 teams that support our global intranet. application team that focuses on the features and capabilities in support of it and maintenance overall. And then we have our content team, and they're comprised of content managers and creators that are spread across the globe, and they're aligned to their country or markets on here. So basically our creators are everywhere. So is it, an interesting thing that we, we're able to scale with this because we did have these distributed teams, with our content team being aligned to a market or to a country, we were able to address that need, immediately by ramping them up. Another thing that we were able to take advantage of with Liberty is our work from home program, which was already in place prior to 2020. And the fact that we're working with teams in different locations. Personally, I work with have coworkers in California, Wisconsin, and all over New England, and coworkers in Europe, like Ireland and Spain. So it's definitely, primed us to be successful. And I do attribute our distributed teams to being, the thing that allows us to be productive early in the pandemic while trying to deliver this global intranet.
Awesome. Brian, that's such an insight. And I feel like a lot of our audience probably experienced a similar, shift in focus to intranets and just employee experience in general. And the fact that, you all went through that shift and you were so prepared by having the distributed teams already, and then also having that really strong focus. And, I love that you had the really clear criteria to look back on when setting the requirements for your employee experience that helped you to accelerate the delivery of the intranet really to all of your employees. So super cool there. And I think that insight too, and how, you really began and the catalyst for the beginnings of the intranet project are great. And we talked a little bit about requirements, but I think it merits a deep dive. So, let's hop into a little bit of a deep dive into the key requirements for Liberty Mutual, and specifically the CMS as well that supports your intranet.
Yeah. So in 2019, we went through a CMS evaluation with the global intranet in mind. And we were looking for a CMS that supported a multilingual, API-driven solution that had the controls in place to govern our vast creator base and the ability to provide content to employees of all abilities on here. So we came to Drupal as our solution, and Drupal, with its ability to be with translations and compliance with ADA and WCAG standards through the core and contributed modules, as well as the ability to be hosted on any cloud platform, allows to, for that global delivery. Additionally, with its headless features and integrations with our internal search and video platform, allow us to expand our avenues of the consumption of content on there. Our primary area where the content is initially consumed is actually a React application known as the homepage. This is something that comes up every time someone opens a browser. They're seeing content that's Drupal, content that's from HR, content from other areas of the site. So it is a portal, and having that integration on there was huge with that. Additionally, the ability to govern our creators was essential to this. Having the ability to apply granular roles and permissions on there so that we can keep everyone in line, as well as with the workflows through the workbench moderation module. We're able to utilize Drupal system to go through our publishing approval process. So with that, with our transition to Drupal, we took the time to address certain aspects of the intranet. First we started with our content. A large effort went into maturing our content. We went from primarily unstructured content that was really a large text field at the end of the day, and then went to a model of using more structure with more fields and field types in different entities to allow us for a greater iterative approach, to follow our agile practices and better maintenance as we transition data or content, across things and, update things over time. Additional area that we focused in with our content was the application of metadata and taxonomy. And this was utilized for analytics, search faceting, access controls, and personalization. Now, content was the only thing that we looked to optimize. We went through our workflows and approval processes. As mentioned, utilizing the Workbench moderation module, we implemented more states and transitions so that, we're not just communicating through email. We can use that system and put into more fine-grained controls around it of who can do what, and leverage those multiple states to really get out the approval process that we needed. Significant effort actually went into our training, and this is a huge thing with us having creators all over the globe. We addressed a lengthy training document that was over 100 pages by transforming into consumable short videos that were 30 seconds at most on there, and then also transition from a classroom style of training to a self-service model because of our creators that are everywhere. This allowed them to be trained at their own pace and work over time and not have to sit in a classroom or sit on a Zoom call. They can go at their own pace.
Amazing. And Brian, there's so many things that stood out to me there, specifically around my conversations that I have with customers. Like, first of all, the way that you're using Drupal and taking a hybrid approach to CMS using Drupal. Everyone's talking about decoupled and headless, and the fact that you have that implemented for your own employees is just so cool and such a cool use case for Drupal. The other thing, roles and permissions. I feel like since you have such a wide variety of, people interacting with your intranet, it's at top of mind of a lot of customers that I talk to about, how do we manage and maintain that many sites and make sure that everyone has the right access. And, pointing out that Drupal is a great tool for that is amazing. And then last, I just wanted to come back to, and you said the word that's up on the slide and everyone's seeing now, but your approach to personalization, and gave us a little bit of a preview into that. But I'm sure everyone perked up a little bit, especially since personalizing an intranet is not something that we typically think of, but employees, want that personalized experience just as much as our customers. So I'd love to, open it up to you to deep dive into how you're delivering personalization for your employees.
Yeah, personalization is at the forefront of our global internet. Being this global company, we want to make sure that we're inclusive. As mentioned previously, we did have a large focus on being US oriented. Now, there was a huge shift in us internally that we wanted to think more globally. So having this content personalization allows it to have a more inclusive feel for the internet and not feel as though employees coming from Thailand or from Spain or Colombia and Brazil come in, they're just feeling like they're reading what the US has versus what, is pertaining to their, country and operation on there. So with that, we were looking for a no-code or low-code solution, to empower our creators, because at the end of the day, our creators are driving the site and the content that's consumed. So we want to, give them abilities to personalize the content without the involvement of the application team, so that application team, which I'm a part of, can still drive the feature development and maintenance of the site. So, we can continue with that focus on there. So we utilize taxonomy as our solution on here, as it is, a way to group content. And in this case, we're grouping content and users. And it serves as a proxy layer between those. So having that, single point to say that this is, what we're targeting to, allows us to link those up and, link up any sort of content to a user, or any sort of user to a content. So there's two major categories that comprise our personalization: who you are and where you are. Who is mostly your role at the company, and you'll receive a different experience whether you're a manager or individual contributor, or even an executive. Then as for where, that's regional or location based, depending on what country or region you're in. Whether you are in Thailand and Vietnam, or in the Andes region that comprises of Colombia, Ecuador, and Chile. But it's not only location oriented. We do put in things in place to understand where you are in the business. So what market you sit in, or what different business unit you are in. So then you can even get down further with the targeting. So this is an example of one of our personalization taxonomies known as segment. This is really comprised of the where. As you can see, there's fields for country and market and region. So our country, is going to be comprised of another taxonomy that's, the 29 countries that we operate in. And then the market and region is, filled with terms that make up our organization and the various levels that there are. And this one particularly is a way that we can communicate to all LM technology employees on here. So so showing it in use, here's an example article that's looking to target to these various segments that you can use, and this is a multi-select field. So if you don't have the right combination of one, you can mix and match where needed to really spread your content across the board on here. So and then additionally, to solve for the who, we do have metadata around here of the audience, and that's comprising of employee and manager and non-employees. So this is a way you can really put access controls around your content, where an employee is not going to be able to see the manager content, and a non-employee, a contractor, would not be able to see either of those. And some of this content is actually intermingled in here. So this was a way that we were able to, have managers go to a single page rather than to a different one so that they can understand, aspects of a policy that's more pertaining to their work versus others. And so having these both location and role-based sort of targeting allows us to really get the right fit of who our audiences are that we want to produce content to. So through this, we established a few pillars of our personalization. As mentioned, we needed a low-code or no-code solution, and that's where taxonomy come in. So what we coined as being content-driven. With content, we're able to create, update, and delete those audiences or personalizations, much faster than we were able to deliver code that would do the same sort of thing. So, we're able to, have a more of aggressive timeline when it comes to these things. And at the end of the day, we're having less work for the application team to do, when it comes to this. With being content driven, we also need a governance model in place. So that comes in with the ownership of the taxonomy. We applied specific roles to certain users that are there to manage the taxonomy on there. So they're ones that will develop the segments or develop some of the supporting content or terms that would help with the taxonomy that we use for personalization. On top of that, with the ever-changing business landscape, we want to make sure that we're future-proof. So we, as best we can, utilize IDs from our employee data, so that if there is a reorganization or any other sort of change that comes, we can, ensure that we can, have the same experience in our data integrity, as well as if there was a needed change, we could migrate that content in any shape or way. There was a previous attempt at personalization where we did use employee data that wasn't ID based, and we faced challenges with said reorg, and then even varying differences between it, like just a one letter off or using the ampersand versus the word and kind of created a different audience, unfortunately, and different experience just from one small thing. So our future-proof strategy that we've used IDs allowed for that. On top of that, what we've done as well, with being able to change things at will of content, is we addressed automating as much as we can. So we even automate the taxonomy terms that come in to support the personalization, so that country stuff or even the business units that we comprise the segment term, that is now automated. So we are flushing that content in from our HR systems, as well as when there is a change to a segment, we're applying it directly to users right away. So there's no lag in time or wait period that you have to have, to, produce content and, helping with driving the personalization forward more aggressively. So some key results of our global intranet, including our personalization. As said, there's a big goal of having more inclusiveness with our site. So we did unify intranets across 10 countries. Some of these countries did not have an intranet before, or is just a file system on, some other site. So having this more fleshed out intranet, allowed them to, really feel like they're part of this global company on there. On top of that, we were able to scale to meet the global need without any additional cost with it. So it was definitely a huge win there with, being cost optimized. And then today, we're actually delivering 60 different personalized experiences with the varying combinations of our segments and role-based sort of access.
That's amazing. I think that, 10 countries, and I know that that's just, a start. And the fact that some of those countries didn't even have an intranet before, just amazing results. And then the fact that those experiences are personalized, especially serving such a large and, diversified employee base as well. Definitely not easy. And it's amazing the success that your team's already driven. So super cool. And I know the audience is probably thinking, right, like, how do I begin? How do I start this? And I think you've already given a lot of great insight into, your approach with taxonomy. But Brian, I'd love to, again, pass it back to give you another opportunity to deep dive and kind of give the audience a little bit of a head start on how they could begin their own journey towards personalization for their intranets.
Yeah, from within our year, within this personalization journey that we had that coincided with the global intranet, here are a few things that our team has found that, really allowed us to, work effectively on here. So, staying content driven. Content is the least common denominator between, a developer, a site builder, or even just a creator. So having that content, and your solution being content driven allows you to, address the changing landscape of, a business or even the globe. Couldn't say that we weren't able to address the global internet and our shift, with the pandemic to being fully remote and servicing, these countries and beyond, without having that mindset of, having the content as king, as the term I typically use on there. Next would be knowing your audience. Extensive research went into us finding the right formula to be effective in how we communicate and who we communicate to. So, looking into our data sets that we utilize, our HR data to say, okay, this is, what we're going to target against and everything. And, getting that formula that would work on there. On top of that, with being content driven, this actually broadens your scope. So knowing, this one-off use case may not work for everything. So we also took a 80-20 rule on there with that. So, knowing that audience to say what's going to be best for the majority of users, help with our decision-making, with the content-driven and the terms that we utilize, or metadata that we utilize for our personalization. And then lastly, and ultimately, do what works best for your group and your teams, so having a flexible approach at it. If content driven or the governance model doesn't really work for you, then you have to think about how you would adjust on there. We definitely learned from past experiences with trying to target it, as I mentioned previously, using not IDs on things and everything, and just being flexible with this. And with these two things above it, content driven and knowing your audience, that would help play into your flexible approach on there.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much. It's been amazing learning more about the employee experience, the intranet that Liberty Mutual is providing to customers. I know we've spent a couple of weeks, and hopefully the audience is right there with me, like giving snaps. It's awesome to see the story go from, the set of requirements that you had to selecting the CMS to then personalizing the employee experience and really delivering globally. So, thank you again for joining us too and sharing your story.
Yeah, I mean, this couldn't have been done without the hard work of, the two teams described, the application team and the content teams, really, being able to address this change that was, driven by the pandemic, and, really allow us to accelerate our global internet and, get to the product that it is today.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian.
Yep.
Cool. And I know that we do have a couple questions. And so I'll just go through my section really quick because I know you're all chomping at the bit to hear a little bit more from Brian. And so what you'll notice from Acquia, right? So Liberty Mutual, amazing customer of Acquia. And we have many customers that are delivering employee experience. And so really, again, I think Brian and Liberty Mutual is such an amazing example of an aspirational employee experience, an aspirational intranet, and what you can do and deliver to your employees, which again, we normally think first about our customers, but our employees are some of our customers as well. And the opportunity is really, again, delivering really great and memorable experiences to our employees because they're engaging more digitally, right? We saw it in Liberty Mutual's story where the pandemic really pushed people to interact more digitally with their employers. I know that right now I'm working from home. Many of you might be sitting at home right now, maybe in the comfort of your own couch, maybe at a home desk. But a couple years ago, that might not have been the case. I probably would have been in the office the majority of the time. And now I'm at home the majority of the time. So that shift really gives us an opportunity to increase digital engagement of our employees and optimize the way that our employees engage with content to make it relevant, easy to find, and also make sure that it's on demand. And what we've noticed is that a lot of times the employee experience can be disconnected, right? We're engaging on many different channels now with many different pieces of content. And there's a lot that gets in the way oftentimes of getting the right content to our employees, making sure that they feel connected to their employer, right? Making sure that you feel part of a community, even though we're even more spread out than ever before. And so employee experience, again, like if we have happy employees, think of how much more amazing our customer experience can be as well. And without really a unified employee experience, really what you're risking is employee satisfaction and even the potential to acquire top talent, right? So the talent pool is even bigger, having more spread out workforce, having the ability to acquire talent and retain talent from not just regionally, but also from across the country, across the globe even. So really when it comes to delivering employee experiences and delivering great and memorable employee experiences, you're looking at increasing employee retention, satisfaction, productivity, and then even growth through the organization. I think of my time at Acquia. I started as a product marketing manager, and now I've grown to a director of product marketing, and that isn't without a great employee experience here at Acquia. So, the key requirements, and I think that, again, Brian and Liberty Mutual have done an amazing job really emulating the true requirements for an employee experience. And Acquia, we think of 5 key buckets. Right? So information access, having the access to the information you need to be productive, being able to discover that content quickly, no matter where it exists within your intranet or employee experience, making sure that all of the applications that you need to be productive, whether that's an HR application or something that you're using in your day-to-day, is connected to your employee experience, being able to collaborate and really foster collaboration across an organization. And then finally, leveraging employee data to make these experiences personalized, which again, Brian gave you a great introduction into how you can do that with Drupal and a taxonomy structure, which is just amazing, right? And making sure ultimately that you're delivering a memorable experience to your customers. So that's really my spiel on employee experiences. I think that Brian, again, and Liberty Mutual have delivered such a memorable and really cutting edge employee experience and intranet. And so it's been really great hanging out with all of you. And now we've reached the fun part of the presentation, our Q&A. And so with that, I'll actually move into some of the questions from the audience. And so, Brian, we do have a first question here. How long did it take you to move from your old solution to Drupal for the intranet?
Yes, so that's a great question. So we did it in piecemeal. As I said, I've mentioned before, we're broken down to different business units. We took it one by one. And this was, primarily because there wasn't an easy transition or a way to gather the data with our, previously unstructured content on our old system and then convert it into what would need to be done with our Drupal. And just, we did expand the amount of content types we had to fit a certain need. Previously, we only had 4, but now we expand to like 10, I believe, on there. So it was done over, I think it was 6 months with all the US content. And then, that was just a matter of, a lot of research and, shaping it and all that to go into those 6 months of on there. So at the end of the day, it went a lot, quicker and smoother than expected, in all honesty, but it was, something that did take some time, but it was just, given the issues that we had previously and then the, very much of a paradigm shift, to be honest, that we have with our, involvement of our content, was the reason it took that time.
Cool. Awesome. And then another question kind of related, what were the main advantages that Drupal had over its competitors?
Yeah, there is a vast amount of CMSs out there. So we did limit what CMS products we did look at. And what we found with Drupal is it's an open source community first and foremost, and on there that was very, had a lot of the stuff that we needed and, very responsive when we were looking to ask around questions and everything for what we found. And, the things mentioned around it was, ability to have translations, and especially with regionalized content. For example, we do have the need for Spanish as European Spanish, but also Latin American Spanish. So being able to, define those different dialects on there with our content was definitely key. And then, we did have a cloud initiative around that. So Drupal's ability to be cloud hosted on any provider, it gave more check marks than other solutions that we looked at. And then, API driven, can't say more about our headless features, and especially the hybrid CMS aspects of it, that allowed us to have this React homepage and not need to do too much effort to get that to be ported over to consume Drupal data.
Awesome. And, another question too, and I think I might know the answer, but for the audience, did Liberty have to modify their approach, so your approach to Drupal as the intranet project was underway, and how did this impact the implementation?
Yeah, with everything, you want to be iterative on there and learn from your mistakes. So initially, we were thinking about the global intranet as splitting it out into, separate sites or domains. But that didn't really fit with our ultimate goal of trying to be inclusive. So our approach definitely changed to being, that with the targeting in place on there. So we're not having you go to a different URL if you're coming from the LIT segment or the Andes market segment or the Asia MCM segment. You're, going to a single URL and going to, the intranet, the global intranet on there. So that was really the paradigm shift that we had on here, where instead of thinking that everything is separate, we wanted to be inclusive on there. And, it goes back to some of the goals that we have, with this global intranet too.
Awesome. And then another question from the audience, if what was the original timeline for implementation that Liberty Mutual had before COVID caused things to speed up? And what stage were they at when COVID prompted the speed up in delivery?
Yeah. So we'll say I believe it was March when we shifted, or was it March or early April that we shifted to full remote. And prior to that we're looking at, Q4 to do the full implementation of the global intranet. So there was very little to no research done around how we do things. So we definitely learned on the fly. And the first thing that we looked at was translations to get the more immediate need of having something that employees, with all different dialects and languages, be able to consume the data that, they would most understand. So we took a look at that and then wrapped in, how do we have different groups using the same site, but not, have the menu or all this content everywhere and, have that personalized experience. And that's where the content targeting came in next and everything. So, it did ramp up things, but we were able to address it. And, with our product owners that we have, they, saw the writing on the wall and said, all right, we need to shift the focus here. And, we were able to, ramp things up and not stay stuck to timelines as, if, other things would have happened.
Yeah, that's awesome. I definitely have to commend the agility too. It's not always easy to make that kind of shift so quickly. So yeah, huge applause from shifting from Q4 to Q1, end of Q1. That's amazing. And a follow-on question to that, aside from COVID currently, what are the other major problems that could arise when delivering a global intranet that could impact it, I'm assuming?
Yeah. So we actually have an authenticated traffic. So that has been an interesting factor to things where we don't really have the ability right now to effectively cache it through a CDN. So the experience coming from, the other side of the globe, like in the Asia Pacific, will be slightly different, but it's at an acceptable level right now. So we're always going to be performance mindful until we get a caching model. So that's something that with all the permutations that you get with, trying to include, 3 or 4, role-based sort of controls with 10 and ever growing amount of, location-based controls, we have to find the right, fit for there. So that's something that we're going to take a look at coming next year on here to see, okay, how do we best, effectively cache things, whether through a CDN or even Drupal cache. So performance is first and foremost, and then overall just user experience, making sure that we're delivering the right experience, not just for the end user, but for our editors on here. So we'll have to, make sure that we're playing all nicely in the sandbox, because it's, being all in one site and not split through multi-sites or different other controls. We need to make sure that, that's working effectively as we're onboarding more countries. We've started with 10, but we have, 19 more to go that, we need to onboard, and our biggest, groups are yet to come.
Awesome. And that's a great insight too, for those in the audience, I'm sure. It's a lot to consider when delivering a global intranet. And shifting gears just slightly, you talked about the training that you optimized as part of the intranet project. And so we have a question around, does self-service model of the training help better with retention of information?
Yeah, we don't truly have any analytics on it, but what we found was it does allow users to go at their own pace, so they're not stuck to this 2-hour period or 2 or 3 hour period on a phone, or even all day, going through the full training document that we previously had. That was, again, over 100 pages. I know I was in my shoes in that place when I started at the company, where I had to go through the training, and man, that was not fun. So allow it to be self-service model, allowed, these employees, especially from all over, go at their own pace, and then they have a training environment where they can trial and error things and, take things as they go. With that, there is an assessment at the end that says, okay, you went through it and all that, and there's feedback that's given, so that will help them understand it. And then on top of that, it's not just the training videos we have. We still have fleshed out documentation that we've improved over time. With every release, we actually produce release notes that will keep them informed of the changing landscape. So we look at the self-service model as helping, the progression of that, and not being stuck to this, 1 day or few hour period that you can only train. You can spread it over, as much time as you need.
Awesome. That's great insight too into the training. I think it's amazing what you all did to optimize that, and video content's so popular now as well. So great approach there. And so
definitely
then
much more consumable ones in the video, because you're seeing it happen rather than trying to, follow along with, bullet points and images. You can see it on there. So, it was a huge win when we shifted to that on there.
Yeah, so much more interactive. I'd way rather watch the video than read some bullets. So that's awesome. So another question from the audience too, around the development of the intranet. So did you handle the development tasks of the intranet in-house, or did you outsource the work? I'll lead with that question. There's a follow-on as well.
Yeah. So this was primarily in-house work on here. So, day one, we were new to Drupal development. I don't think any of the developers on the team were on there that had any previous experience. So we learned as we went and everything, but having our guidelines in place within our organization, and then the requirements that we had and some of the pillars that we put in place on there, really it was able to, have a smoother and on that, because we did have that end goal and state on there. So it definitely helped. And there were transitions of things, like people came and went, but we were still able to be productive. And, we went to a model of not just being developers doing everything, but we do have a role of being a config engineer. So they can get in and do like anything that's just strictly configuration on there. So we did develop our process over time to expand who can do it, and kind of are building out a Drupal shop internally on here to, help, with some things, and, help each other out as it comes. Because the intranet is not our only Drupal product. We do have some brochureware sites that are Drupal related, and that they were launched at the same time. So we do have knowledge sharing across the board with those two products.
Awesome. So we have two follow-on questions to that. I'm going to ask them one after the other. So the first one, and I think you addressed this a little bit, right? But how do you get your employees into Drupal as users? Is the first.
Yeah, so there's two ways that we do it. There's just-in-time provisioning. So when you sign in, if you don't have a previous account, that will provision an account for you, and then also apply the essential data for you to get that personalized experience on here. So we utilize our identity provider to help that out. And then other times we do sync users depending on certain situations. So if we want to bring in onboard a country and get like the full facet of users that they have, employees that they have, then we can run a update job on there. This is something that we're looking to address, so that we're not, doing so much at sign-in. We're going to look to go to a more event-driven model, where when things happen within our HR data, we'll look to update the users on the Drupal side. So as they come and go, or even change names, on there, that we can address it effectively, with that. Because, with various ways, because even with our React application, that homepage, we produce our news there, and it has social aspects on it that you can like articles on there. So we need to know who you are, essentially, so that we can make sure that you like it. So there's those ways that we produce users, the just in time, and then some background jobs to get employees there.
Awesome. A lot of flexibility there too. And then another question too, going back a little bit to the development of your intranet, do you have a UX team in-house, and who helped with the layout and the design?
Yes, we do have a UX team in-house, and they're closely aligned to our application team. I would say they're even a part of the application team if you're going to look in that lens and everything. So they actually produced the mock-ups and the layout for the site for us to be effective. With our content evolution, transition from Drupal, I did touch on like the content types, but another thing was the layout. Having that open text field that you can add whatever to, that really didn't create a consistent look and feel. So that was another area that we touched on, that we leveraged Drupal, and particularly a layout builder, to help with that consistent look and feel, where we have reusable blocks that can be added to the layout, and reusable fields that can be added to the layout, and look and feel that was helped with our UX team that is internal.
Awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, having a UX team is definitely critical. And the final question that's all related here is, how easy is it to find Drupal developers and vendors to help with the projects? It sounds like you did a lot of this in-house and really, learned it yourselves, which is amazing. But have you had any experience with, searching and finding Drupal developers or vendors to help?
Right. So two things to that. Drupal being an open source community, you can, be ones to commit, or even, get helped out. So you can submit a feature request to a module, and that can be something that, other developers, look to, address. So that open source community is a huge area that we've, leaned on, especially just getting stuff to start with, having a module that you can get 80% there, and then maybe do a little bit here and there to get to the true value of what you're looking to add. Was huge. And then, we started this journey with Acquia because, we were starting, dead scratch from zero. So having Acquia to help us out, less than a long way on there. So I can't really speak to the specifics of looking for other vendors on there, but I'm sure there's some out there that can look to do, might just take a Google search in all honesty. But again, the open source community was a huge thing for us, and being able to leverage that, and and the communications there, there's plenty of users out there that can help your situation and everything.
Awesome. Yeah, I've got a little bit of experience with the Drupal community myself, and I have to say that they're so fun to work with, and just the breadth of the modules that have been created by the community are constantly updated. I've talked to quite a few core contributors and module contributors at Acquia, and it's just amazing, like the community bond. So if anyone on the call hasn't explored the Drupal community at all, I definitely urge you to. They're also such a welcoming group, so it's been a lot of fun to connect in that community. And so shifting gears a little bit, I know that in my unpacking of employee experience, I mentioned search and searchability of content as an integral part of employee experience. And I know, Brian, during your requirements for a CMS and an intranet, you mentioned search. So the question is, which search engine was used to provide the employee search experience? And does it span more than just Drupal? And also, does it handle personalization and return personalized search results?
Yes. So for our internal search engine, we actually shifted from a Google appliance to LucidWorks around the same time our Drupal intranet went out. Like I think it was 2019 or 2018, around that same time on there. So that is searching not only Drupal, but a lot of other products that we have, like our social site and other areas of it. So it is a collective of everything within our company that we have ties to. As far as personalization goes, that's an area that we're looking to bring into that product. It's not, strictly related to Drupal, but with the ability to supply the metadata that we apply to our sites with Drupal, we could, supply to that search engine, search platform to be used, because it's not being hosted through Drupal or presented through Drupal. It's just going to be, it's a consumer of Drupal, much like our React homepage.
Awesome. That's great insight. And I feel like, again, search is so key to employee experience. I know for myself, like I go and search for things before I do anything else. So it's awesome that you found a partner in LucidWorks, also a partner of Acquia. So it's an amazing cross there, and they've got a great search platform. So very cool. Great. And then, we'll close out with one last question here. And I think the whole audience would love to hear, have you gotten feedback from the employees about the new intranet? And what does the feedback look like so far?
All very positive. I believe I mentioned that, a lot of these groups that were coming in did not have any aspect of an intranet before. It might have been just a file system sitting somewhere that you can access, but this is more of a flushed out experience where you can, navigate far easier and everything. And, with that on top of, having this React homepage that we also utilize, they go there to, receive a personalized experience. So it's a very much a inclusive site now and everything. And, it's all been positive feedback, and, they're just amazed by, what, they have at their fingertips now, and, more to come. We're going to, do as much as we can to, get the employees what they need as far as information and everything, and be able to do their day-to-day tasks more effectively. So that's a huge driver of this global intranet, beyond just being more inclusive and make everyone feel like a global company and part of the global company.
Amazing. Brian, so cool. And thank you for answering so many questions. We had such an engaged audience. It's amazing to see, again, so much engagement there. And apologies if we didn't get to your questions. And with that, we will look to close out. So I'll pass it back to Alec. And actually, before I do that, Brian, any last words for the audience? There's been a lot of questions, and your presentation is amazing. So I'd love to just open it up to you if you have any final closing thoughts.
Yeah. The global intranet was, something that for my 10 years at Liberty has always been something that we wanted. And every year we were just like, it's not going to work. But with Drupal, we got to work. We were able to get it to work, and especially in the pressures that we had with ramping up our timelines by 6 months altogether. It was amazing, and it goes to the work of the individuals that are associated with the global internet. That really we were able to adjust and collectively with the everything that we had in place previous to that, and then our vision. It was it's definitely a pride that we have of this global internet, and something to point to, saying, yeah, that's something that's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brian. And again,
thank you.
Yeah, of course. We're so happy to, join you in this webinar. And thank you again for sharing your story and the success of the intranet at Liberty Mutual. So again, with that, we'll close out, and I'll pass it back to Alec to lead you all out of the webinar.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Maggie and Brian. We had a ton of questions come through. We could have probably spent another hour and just answering questions that come from the audience. So thank you both. And thank you to all the attendees for your participation. We really appreciate that. That makes for a fun and engaging webinar. So we really appreciate it. Again, Maggie, Brian, thank you. And one more time, thank you to Acquia for sponsoring today's event. It's been a pleasure working with them on this event, and hopefully I see them pop up on my schedule again in the future. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you all in the next webinar.
Alrighty. Thank you.